Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Peteman Reviews. Today we have the G1 Autobot Rodimus Prime. This is the commemorative edition release. There isn't really any changes between the commemorative and the original release. Now Rodimus Prime is the Autobot leader following the events of Transformers the movie, and the toy kind of reflects that as well. At the time, the new leaders were presented as being Galvatron and Ultra Magnus, and that's where the money seems to have gone, because Galvatron was a big toy with sound and light. Ultra Magnus didn't have sound and light, but he was an articulated trainer. I know they based the front model of Optimus Prime, but they did give him a new trailer which he combined with to make quite a big robot. Rodimus is a bit, I suppose, a bit of a letdown in comparison. He's fairly small, and given that the other previous two leaders of the Autobots who transformed into trucks were articulated trucks, Rodimus is more of a van. I know he's presented as a truck, but there's no gimbal or anything, so he doesn't turn, the whole lot turns, so it's more of a van. And even as you can see here, you might not, the wheels don't always move. It's kind of, the trailer moves by itself. That said, the trailer's got some very nice flames on it. The decals are pretty good. Wheels are alright. It's quite clever how this does appear from a certain point of view to be a continuation of the exhaust from there, and obviously you've got the front, which is quite well done. So they obviously taken it from Hot Rod's model and progressed it, but it does feel a bit like it's a second thought. I suppose because they'd already felt that they'd done a release of Hot Rod, and they'd also done a big leader figure, they felt that they had to do perhaps a not so big figure. I kind of wish they'd waited another year or so and properly released Rodimus Prime, but never mind. Okay, so on to the transformation. So this whole front part here detaches and pulls out, which is a bit odd, I have to say. So that gives you your Rodimus figure, and the trailer disappears off to one end for the moment. It's interesting that in all the comics and toy series, it always implies that Rodimus's trailer is part of the robot and transforms into the robot. It's never a separate model. The toy has it as a separate model, which you never ever see again. I guess that's all they could do to make it work, but it just kind of shows the limitations of it. Anyway, this pops off. Pop this off. You then pop the wheels down the feet up like that. To move the head up, to transform the top part of the robot, the arms just pop out like this. This all pops up. You rotate this part around, back down, and the head pops up from here. Finally, this goes back on like so. There we have Rodimus Prime. You then have a rather large gun which fits in here, which is a continuation of Hot Rod's gun, but obviously extended. And there we are, that's Rodimus Prime. It's a pretty poor figure, it has to be said. Very tall, very slim, to make him taller than Hot Rod, but it kind of just doesn't really work. Arm articulation is poor in that he moves up and down, he waggles up and down, but there's no elbow or anything. It's a real step backwards. When you consider this is the toy of Hot Rod, which was released obviously slightly earlier, you can obviously see the similarities. That's to be expected. Hot Rod feels more, he's a bit squatter, a bit chunkier, a bit more proportioned. Rodimus, they've obviously made him taller, and that's obviously the specific brief, is make him taller. But they've kind of lost proportions as a result. Hot Rod does have elbows, which Rodimus lacks, though Hot Rod's arm doesn't go up, that's as far as he can go. So Rodimus does perhaps have slightly more articulation there, but it's still not good, is it? When you consider, Optimus Prime before him had full arm movements, how backwards they've gone in releasing the new moulds. And just in terms of the gun, you can see that it's got the extension there with the little bits that continue there, and then it's just made larger, which I guess is exactly what they've done with the figure as well. The continuation and made it a bit larger. So on to the trailer then. We'll just move these out of the way. The trailer does actually do something. Now if you've seen, this is slightly not closed because this is a big weak point. You see, this has only been transformed a few times and you can already see this is starting to fracture. So it is a big weak point with the design. Trailer opens up and the gun pops out, like so. You do then have two additional bits of kibble, which are, it's a shield effectively. It pops into the gun. Where does it pop into the gun? The gun extends further, so it pops into these sides here, and it acts as a kind of shield effectively for Rodimus to stand behind, so that he can stand in the trailer and fire it like that. It's obviously a gimmick. The trailer never ever appears in any canon other than the toy. You don't see it in comics, you don't see it in the cartoon series, it's just in the toy. And it's obviously a, what do we do with the trailer? There we go. Height comparison wise, we've already seen Hot Rod. As you can see, Hot Rod's actually fallen over a little bit, isn't he? There we go. It's obviously that he's much bigger than that. You then have Spinister. If you can hear the meowing, that's the cat desperate to come in for some reason. I don't quite know why, but here we are. So that's Spinister, who is considerably shorter than them. And I guess that's fine for Spinister to be that. He was a much later release, and it's just, yeah. And Galvatron, Mania King, who is slightly taller than Rodimus. There we are. I think that's all there is to say. I have to say, Rodimus Prime feels like a letdown for me. Hot Rod is the better of the two figures. Obviously, you kind of have to have Rodimus if you want to keep the leaders going, but of the two, Hot Rod is definitely the guy that's had the more work put in. While he still lacks a certain amount of detail, he feels a far more complete robot to this guy, who is really lacking in detail. I don't know, it's almost as though they just didn't really know what to do with it, and they felt we have to do something. I would rather they've waited and released it. It's out there, you know, is it worth getting? Well, it's not a bad toy. It's not a bad toy, so yes, it is worth getting, but it's just not as good as it should have been. It's not as good as Hot Rod. If you need to save up and you're looking at a choice between Hot Rod and Rodimus Prime, get Hot Rod. However, if you're trying to complete them, or if you're not too fussed and you can get both, then yeah, it's not a bad toy. It's just not good. It could have been so much better. I think that's the missed opportunity that feels to me. Anyway, please leave your comments. Subscribe to other videos. Click on the links to other videos. Let me know if you think I'm being a bit harsh, and we'll see you on the next review. Hopefully without the cat meowing this time. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.